where you stand, and then we'll
Yeah.
talk a little more about it.
Well, I'm very skeptical of going into Syria and launching a war, which is what we would be doing. Syria is a sovereign nation, and when you go in and drop bombs on it, that's an act of war. Skeptical of voting to do that at this time. I think the president's proper role, though, is to bring such decisions to Congress, because that's what, in fact, you're doing when is starting a war. So that, I mean, it's properly before us. I give him credit for bringing, at least temporarily, the decision to us. And then he's asked us to postpone the vote to let this peace process play out. So that is okay with me as long as he unilaterally doesn't decide to go in. On the day of the speech that he gave this week from my desk in Washington, I sent a letter along with other members of Congress from Indiana, Susan Brooks and Luke Messer, and we asked the president in his speech to outline several different things. The reason why we're going, what we're going to do there specifically, what that would look like, and then what the toll was going to be, what the cost was going to be in terms of lives and treasure. And during the speech, he really didn't answer much of any of that. And so that speech didn't help convince me either. Nor do I think he convinced people of the 4th District or the country, frankly, about why we need to be in Syria at this time.
What are your thoughts about just the recent developments, Monday, and the Russian kind of development as far as taking over the chemical thing and
right? I think we're in a more precarious position now because of the awkward and confusing messages that this commander-in-chief continues to send the rest of the world. Russia is a dying country. It had a million less people in it this year than it did the year before. Next year it will have 1.5 million less than it does this year. It has been trying to get a foothold in the Middle East since the 1970s. And because of our decision-making, because of our diplomatic processes, I think we kept Russia where it rightly needed to be. Now, Vladimir Putin is calling the shots and decrying what we believe to be American exceptionalism. It is not a good place for us. Meantime, the one thing that the president did state that was convincing in his speech is that they had weapons of mass destruction that can eventually get to the U.S. shore if we don't take care of them, degrade them, I think was his word. And now those weapons of mass destruction, those chemical weapons, are being dissipated by the Syrian leader as we speak, being hidden and strewn throughout the countryside. That doesn't help our situation either. So this situation, because of our bungling, quite frankly, meaning the president's bungling, might escalate into something more serious. And we need to be prepared to act at that time, I believe, but that's not this time.
Are you confident that the Syrian president used chemical weapons against his own people?
The information is still coming out. As of this week in Congress, I was not, which was another reason that I was not for this. Chemical weapons were used, I believe. We're still not sure who really used them.
If you can prove that the Syrian government did use it, would that be a reason that you think would
No,
be
no. The reason for, again, going to war, which is what we'd be doing when you drop bombs on a sovereign nation that is not at war with you, would have to be a national security threat. And that's even more than a national security interest. It would be a national security threat. And I haven't seen evidence of that yet, so definitely remain skeptical and would be voting no. Now, if Israel was severely threatened by all this, that is a national security threat to us. I think of Israel in glowing terms, and certainly a solid ally. I think of it as an unsinkable aircraft carrier of ours in the Middle East in a lot of respects. I mean, that is that strategic to us, number one, and number two, they're very good friends and allies of the U.S. So that would trip my threshold, and I have not seen that yet either. Also, I don't think it's certainly not there's no ironclad proof of war atrocities. There's also It can't be said that, and I think the president was mistaken for saying this in a speech. I don't think it can be said that there'll be no boots on the ground. I don't think anyone can guarantee that. If we send fighter jets into Syria and one of those jets goes down, we're sending people in after that pilot, and rightfully so. That's boots on the ground. The only way to verify that we've hit the targets we intended is to send boots on the ground and get a visual on that. That's the only 100% way. So then, like other wars of recent history, we've seen them escalate into boots on the ground. So I don't believe that in this idea of a limited strike where we don't involve American lives. I take more of the MacArthurite position, General MacArthur's position, when we decide to go to war, again, which this is, we should be able and be ready and be prepared to risk every life, to risk all our treasure. Meaning you got to be much more selective when you decide to do these things, because there will be real cost, and we should be prepared to go all the way if we're going to go to war with somebody.
Probably last question. How about national security? The president at times sort of laid out a moral argument for war at times. Do you think that the United States has sometimes that obligation to go to war for moral reasons, even if it doesn't directly affect our national security interests?
I think if we had the luxury to do that, to be the world's policeman, regardless of threats to our national security, that's one thing. But quite frankly, talking with you now as a member of the Budget Committee, we are losing that luxury. We are losing the option, and that's not a good thing. I'm not proud of that. We are losing that luxury, losing those options, because we have failed to take care of the debt and spending situation back home, and it is making us a weaker country. It is making and will make us weaker militarily, and I'm not just talking about sequester. The military admits that they can definitely put on this war in Syria or elsewhere if they had to. It's not a sequester issue I'm talking about. I'm talking about lessening our options and lessening our ability because of our long-term structural spending problem and debt problem.